That's okay. We're live.
We are live. I don't have the production quality that Jen has. I'm moving off of that face by face frame. And we're going to try to get the rest of the team here into this chat. But as we do that, I'd love to hear from folks as they're joining. Have you ordered the book? Have you read it? Have you read part of it? So drop into the chat. We also have some folks joining us over to the side that you can't see from TikTok Live. So drop into the chat sort of where you are in your own journey with reading Heels to Deals.
I've got
There we go. I love it. I'm multitasking while you guys are dropping in that info. I'm on a chat here trying to figure out how to add the rest of our folks. So I see Jennifer.
I had two links. I had two calendar invitations and I opened the first one, clicked on the link. It took me to, so I wonder if other people, that was user error. And so I realized that I was not live. I was just in the chat. And so I went to the other calendar invitation and clicked on it.
Okay, so that might be what is happening. Shawanda, I don't know if you heard that, but if you're a speaker and you aren't in the StreamYard link, I can't add you to the studio. So if you are a speaker, pop into the StreamYard link and
okay. I just
join
sent
the conversation.
Shawanda the StreamYard link.
You're the best. Look at that teamwork. I just decided to go live and Jen's face looked horrified. I was like, Jen, I'm sorry. I don't have the production value that you do. We're just going to start this conversation. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to tell this gentleman that was helping me in chat that we got it sorted. Okay, it looks like a lot of people are going to be ordering the book. So that's very exciting. See a couple people that have ordered it and have started reading it. So that's amazing. Really, really appreciate you placing those orders. I appreciate you reading it. And for Stella, Jen, and Jennifer, got it sorted. I think somebody's playing like a redoubled. You guys want my voice? I mean, that's so nice of you, Stella. But for Stella, Jen, and Jennifer, I'm so excited to have you here on this LinkedIn Live. Hopefully we'll have a couple other people pop in during our time together. For everybody joining us here on LinkedIn and folks to the side of me on my phone on TikTok, this is meant to be interactive. So pop your questions for the speakers, for the authors into the chat. Oh gosh, like love the names that I'm seeing here. Amazing. Well, should we just jump in? I feel like we have some good questions to cover. So I think Precious is going to be joining us pretty shortly. But if we go by the order of authors in the book, Stella, that puts you up first. You can kick us off. You can kick us off. So something that really struck me, Stella, about your chapter was that you have, and I mean, I guess it's not unique to have a non-sales background, but you really had a non-sales background. You sort of came to the profession later in life, and you have a very close relationship with language. And I'd love to hear how you think that relationship with language has impacted your professional success. And we all know that communication is critical to success in sort of, any commercial role, any client-facing role. So I'd love to hear your advice for our audience on how they maybe can become better communicators.
Of course. Thank you for doing this, Leslie, and having us all on. As an English language learner, so I was born in Iraq, so I completely didn't know the English language and had to learn everything at school. And as a previous educator, I really focused on this concept of code switching. Some people maybe have heard of it, some maybe not. And so it refers to understanding your audience and then shifting your language to ensure that everyone understands what you're talking about. And so within my 10 years, I often had to switch the vocabulary, depending on if I was talking to colleagues, administration, parents, learners, and especially within the special education population, I had a range of ability levels. And so I was really strategic and thoughtful in what kinds of words I was using to make sure that everyone, again, was able to understand clearly what I was saying. So just kind of swapping out words that you would assume people know because of the mainstream media, but it's not so prevalent, maybe depending on culture, socioeconomic level, demographic. And so coming into the SaaS space, I noticed that right away because there's like an acronym,
For
crazy
everything.
amount of jargon. And it's kind of like this own community, right? So if you don't know it, if you're not speaking up and asking questions, what does that mean? You're kind of not privy to what's going on, or you're Googling on the side, what are they actually talking about? And so then it kind of limits your ability to participate in the conversation. And so I think, in any field that you're in, really pause and think about the terms you're using, just like that. Why do I say utilizing? Using, and be more human as you can with it, and stop and think, is this a domain specific word? Is it only people in this field are going to understand this, or can anyone understand these terms? And so I think that's what I really strive to focus on, bringing that human aspect. There's a time and place for the business jargon, but I think everyone's kind of like over it sometimes, and you're just like, hey, how's things been going? How are you meeting where you thought you were going to be, or your progress, instead of, how are your objectives for this quarter going? And just relax. Let's, be a human.
I love that. It's interesting that you call out the jargon specifically because I talked about ways that we gatekeep access in my last newsletter, and that deep level of jargon that is used in the sales profession, the KPIs and the OKRs and the CTAs, it's wild. And for new professionals coming in, it's a bit overwhelming and a bit daunting. I think maybe a bit of permission to give folks that are newer to sales is ask what acronyms mean, write them down, look them up, and don't feel like you are supposed to know everything, because that's sort of an unrealistic expectation. And maybe a CTA to all of the professionals out there is, to your point, just use more human language. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And I would say an easy thing to do is just like if you were writing something down, like in an essay format or something, the first time you say it, you say the entire words, and then you'll say the acronym, call to action, CTA, and then moving forward, I'm going to use CTA. So just kind of that's a really quick thing. It took me 2 seconds to do that. So just being mindful of it, I think it's a practice, and hope to see more of that come down for everyone.
Oh, that's amazing. And we have a comment in the chat here from Alexis, just about how relatable that story is, and the human connection and the humor to sales. So that's great. That's wonderful. And while you were sharing, I saw that Amelia joined us. So welcome, Amelia.
Thank you.
I'm telling you, the user error here on my part.
Backstage, whatever that means. Like, I'm a virtual backstage. Hello. But I'm like, am I in the right place? I can see them. Am I supposed to join? I don't know.
We got there.
Hang out. So we got there. I'm here.
We got there. Amazing. Well, happy to have you. Next up in the book, next chapter up is Jen Ferguson, who is the LinkedIn Live expert. I feel like you have had a lot of jobs, and you wear a lot of hats and have a lot of areas of expertise. You popped into my inbox just this weekend and helped me make some Canva images.
Well,
So I love it. I love it. But it makes me think of your chapter, because you are somebody that's willing to wear lots of hats. You are somebody that is willing to like step up and offer help for free when you saw that I was struggling with Canva, or hosting the LinkedIn Lives that you host every Friday and giving folks a platform. And something that really struck me in your chapter was that you shared that you took a job as a secretary to get in the door with an organization. And I think there's often a perception with folks trying to break into sales, or maybe you're even trying to move into a different type of sales role, that it's not appropriate or it's perceived as negative to like take a step back, to take a step forward. I deeply disagree with that. But I'd love to hear sort of your take, and I'd love to have you share a bit about your experience with folks listening.
Yeah, sure. So thanks so much for having me, first of all. Happy to be here. And yeah, so my career started out in retail. So I was traveling the country, opening new stores, and somehow got into the cigar business. And so here I am, a general manager of a cigar club, as well as a bar, a retail shop, wholesale business. We've got live entertainment. And it, like, the concept of the cigar club just really intrigued me, because we would like sell corporate memberships for people to just come and use that space. We're all trying to be healthy now, right? But back in the day, that's like come and sit in my smoke-filled air with my humidifiers and just network, right? And they would pay a lot of money to come and use this space. And so I had conference rooms, and it was, I'd have software salespeople to come in and, do their demo, do their thing. They'd get cigars and cognacs and sign their contracts. And I'm like, that is so easy. Here I am, nights, weekends, whenever, working like so many hours. And that dude just rolled up, smoked a cigar, did some cognac, signed some contracts, and now they want to go play golf. And I'm like, that's all I did was relationship building, and I can do that. I can do that anywhere. And so I was like, I need to get into software. And I always had this love of technology. And so I'm like, looking at the jobs that were open, of course, I was going to go for something entry level, only because I like to sort of get that big view to understand what it's all about before I dig in, right? And so I was a secretary for a couple weeks there. And then I went right into sales, because you can tell right away I'm a salesperson, just a salesperson. So anyone looking, to get either into tech or get into sales, making sure that you're, if you're trying something new, coming in early into the process is a good opportunity to get your feet wet, to get a look around, to understand the scope of the organization, where you might bring the most value to an organization. It's if you look at it as an opportunity. My career's always sort of looked like a jungle gym rather than a ladder. Like I'm bouncing around from different types of levels of positions. And that's where I find the most learning, the most new skill sets, the most places where I'm challenged the most, and can then show up and say, this is where I bring value. Do you want me to bring value to you in this way? So I think it's a huge opportunity, and especially for women, which is the point of the whole book, a career in sales gives you that financial freedom. It gives you the freedom of your schedule. It's, while there are ups and downs, it's still one of the best things I ever did, was getting into software sales. So I love it. So taking an opportunity to really look at the landscape of an organization when you get in the door. And then also leveraging any transferable skills. Stella mentions in her story, coming from education, that has huge application for communication skills, but like even servers and people who are hosts in restaurants. And there are so many different ways that the skill sets for sales apply for so many other things. I joke sometimes that, what is the difference between scalable revenue and liquor inventory? Right? There's no difference. You need to be able to predict predict liquid that you're going to have on hand, or you're predicting revenue. It's like, there's real, if you've ever done a liquor inventory, and I tell you, if you've ever done a liquor inventory, you would go, oh my gosh. I remember seeing the scalable revenue model and all the spreadsheets going, it's liquor inventory.
Oh
I know
my
how to do
God,
this,
that's hilarious, Jen.
right? It's liquor
That's
inventory.
hilarious.
What is the difference? And I'm like, I'm looking super close, like, what's the difference? No, I know exactly how this works. So, like keeping an open mind and thinking about where your skills, the things that you've learned throughout your life, bring value to organizations, and leveraging that when you go in for these opportunities to get into either sales or tech or whatever.
I totally agree. And I think I love the call out about, sort of your career trajectory being up, down, all around, because I think often if you're only looking at LinkedIn, it sort of feels like everybody else is just going up, up, up. And that's not the reality. Almost everybody's career sort of takes some weird turns. There's some ups and downs. Maybe one last quick question for you, Jen, because this is about women in sales. How do you find the balance between the humility, right? Like being able to take a job that maybe isn't your ideal job because it's the foot in the door, because it's the opportunity to get the groundwork, but not devaluing yourself or not taking a lesser job when you should be asking for more? I didn't tell you I was going to ask this question, so I'm really putting you on the spot.
No, it's okay. I mean, I think like at the end of the day, your success is up to you. And who cares what anyone else thinks, right? At different points in my life, I wanted different things. I remember when I was traveling all the time and my 3-year-old was throwing herself in my luggage, and I go, I just want to be a stay-at-home mom. And that was my dream. And then as soon as I got to be a stay-at-home mom, I hated it. It was like the worst thing for me. And I was like, how do I get out of here? How do I escape? I've sold my house. I'm now living in the condo I previously bought. How did this happen? Oh, because you never know where you're going to end up. So now I define success by my children being good humans and me enjoying what I do at work and feeling like I bring value and that, I'm making a significant contribution. So
that really resonates. I mean, especially for me, most of the folks probably joining know that I recently turned down like a huge job offer, which is the offer that I thought was what I needed on my path to CRO, which is what I thought I wanted, because I reevaluated what was really important. And it turns out it in fact was not that. So yeah, being open, being a little bit flexible, being aligned to maybe less of exactly where you want to go and more of who you want to be on the journey.
I'll give you another quick example. I got a scholarship to a VP of sales program. And I'm like, oh gosh, I can't wait. I can't wait to learn more. And I get in and I'm in it and I'm like, oh wow, I really don't want to be a VP of sales ever. Like, I don't, want that
average
right?
18-month tenure.
I don't want to do that. And so then I started digging deeper into what are my, the skills that I actually bring to the table and that what I excel at to determine sales enablements for me, right? Because I've always been good at training and coaching. And so not putting any preconceived expectations of what your career journey should look like, because at the end of the day, it's about you.
Love that. Love that. That's everybody listening here on TikTok, on LinkedIn. Your career journey is about you. That is sage advice. Next in Heels to Deals is Amelia's chapter. And for the folks that are listening, drop questions in. This can be as interactive. This is for you. So if you have questions for these authors, please don't hesitate to share them, share your own stories in the chat. This is definitely a conversation and a community that we are creating while you think up some questions. So Amelia, in your chapter, you introduced a concept called marginal privilege. And I thought it was just such a powerful perspective. And I kind of just want everybody to embrace it. I loved it so much. So would you mind sharing sort of what it is with our audience, and then maybe giving them a little bit of advice how they could apply it in their own lives?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm first and foremost super honored to be here with y'all, as always, whenever we are able to get together virtually or wherever the world takes us in the world of women in sales and what we're doing. But so I was one day writing this LinkedIn post, and I wanted to. I've always been one to just think that relationships are at the forefront, going to be my path to success. I didn't know. I mean, I had the White House, the picket fence, the two dogs, the babies, whatever. I had the whole thing where I thought I was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom, just like Jen, to where I realized my my idea of my life, what I had thought since I was a little girl, what I watched my mother do, all of that, it was where I was not I was not that. That was not me. And I found myself in a position of not really not really being able to, I don't know, hone in on what I was good at. I lost myself. I forgot who Amelia was. I was just mommy. I was stay at home. I was cooking. I was cleaning. I was trying to cook. I'm a terrible cook, but I was burning food and I was being a great mom though, and trying to keep up with the laundry and whatnot. But I was also, and this is just totally being transparent, I was in a failing marriage and I was in my 20s and looking at my life like, wow, this is so not what I planned. This is not the way my life is supposed to go. This is not what I ever foresaw seeing going on in my life. And so I had a choice. It was either you wallow in all of that and you just sit there and you just realize, okay, this is life. I'm going to take it for what it is and just try to embrace it. But really, you're just like burning inside saying, I mean, you're burning your heart basically. Like you're just kind of shredding it because you're not standing up for your own self without even realizing it. Depression will set in and all that. And so always, I played sports all growing up. And so I always kind of go back to this like mindset of everything being a challenge. So I look at everything like, okay, this can be something that I take in my life where I'm like, this is not where I'm supposed to be and sulk in it. Or I can look at it as, okay, what am I going to do about it? And I'm going to challenge my situation opposed to sit in it. So I I started kind of figuring out who's Amelia again. So I started writing a lot. And I used to write all the time when I was in high school. So I've got these like just journals full of writings that one day I want to do something with them. But it's crazy to look back on them and see how in this marginal privilege idea kind of came from that was I would go back and read some of these and everything is figure outable. You know, everything you write things down and you think how in the world is this going to happen? You know, how am I going to fix this in my life? And then you read a year later what you wrote a year prior and you think, wow, I never knew my life was going to go in this direction. So I life just kept kind of snowballing and whatnot. And I thought, okay, my girls and I, we're going to figure things out and I'm going to make a name for myself and I'm going to do things the way that Amelia wants to do things with knowing that I'm doing things that are in the very best interest of myself and for my two daughters and their future. And I'm going to be proud of who I am. And I'm going to take life as just at the horns and just take it as a challenge. And I'm just going to better up. I knew nothing. I didn't know what an SDR, that acronym meant. I knew nothing, literally nothing. But I applied for this job and single mommy at the time. And I was in St. Petersburg, Florida. So close to where Jen is. And so I applied for this job and I go in and I just start talking to them and I don't know anything about sales. I know nothing. And one of my first questions was, well, if you hire me, who's the person here that I need to beat who had the most appointments booked on that day? Because I'm going to prove that I can do this. So I had to get that mindset of like, I'm going to challenge whatever it is that's in front of me in a good way. I'm going to set these boundaries of like, all right, I'm not going to like double what they did. If I get one more, great, then I I did what I said I was going to do. But I chose to write in those margins. So everybody has their story, right? So it's written, a lot of our stories are written out. There's different beliefs that everyone has, and that goes into, I think this really relates to any kind of belief, honestly, is that certain things are going to be mapped out in your life. And there's the inevitable that happens too. There's the happenstances, the circumstances, whatever it may be, situations you put yourself in, or the situations that just pop up and you just deal with them. When you look at a sheet of paper, you look at this writing, or if you look at the written words in this book of all of these women, it's where there's so much room still on that page, right? So even if things are so written out for you, and I mean, I could look at my page of things thinking failed marriage, and got to figure things out, got to figure out how to even make money on my own. I got to figure out what an SDR is at some point. I've got to figure out, and I lost my mom when I was 15. So figuring out how to be a mother without my mother too was a challenge in and of itself. And so I had to just look at everything and think, okay, if I break everything down, here's a layout of what the lay of the land kind of thing on this sheet of paper. Where do I fill in these blanks? Where do I have these areas where I can say, but XYZ, and change my narrative a bit and be the author of my story, not just the co-author of my story, and take matters into my hands the way that it's going to be best suited for me, just not 6 months from now, but 3 years from now, 5 years from now, my whole future, and for my children too. How do I best position myself? It's writing in my margins and filling in what I don't necessarily know, but it's what I know that can be best. And even if I write things down and it's not going to be this winning solution of sorts, because we don't know what we don't know. And so we don't know where life is going to take us at times. And there's going to be things that you're like, holy shit, like I did not think that was going to be tossed in there, right? Like that, I want that sentence erased forever in my story. Get that away, but you can't. It's part of your life. So you've got the marginal privilege to be able to fill in the way that you react to things, the way that you interact with people too, the way that you have empathy, the way that you have conversations, how you challenge yourself or challenge others, or how you help. And it's kind of led me to where I am right now with being in RevOps. That was never the plan. And I, went from figuring out what SDR even meant to being in RevOps and helping people build this foundational work for their companies. And it's really amazing to think, I don't know how that progressed, but it did. And it's solely from saying, I'm going to just do whatever's in my book. I'm going to just do what I feel is right, page by page, line by line, break it down, simplify things in your life. Because if you can't simplify things, and I'm one of the biggest overthinkers in the entire world, I totally am. So if I don't write things down, I'll forget. And if I don't write things down, I'm going to overthink about all of them. There's going to be a million different scenarios in my head. So if I write things down and I've got this outline of things, I know I've got my marginal privilege. What's going on in my life is written here, but I can I can fill in the blanks of where to go and what I think is best, and pivot and adjust where I need to be. But knowing who you are is important. Knowing who you're not is just as important. So figuring that out as you go along, and line by line, realizing I hate this line, but I'm going to make the best of it, and writing that in your story and verbalizing that, and finding a tribe who's going to be there for you when you're like, life sucks right now and I need you to just pour into me, or life is amazing, I need you to cheer for me. Or you've already got the people who are doing that. You've got to have the people who are going to support you or give you a slap on the wrist and tell you to get your butt in gear too. You've got to have both. And grateful for all of you ladies too, who have just been supporters in my success and also know my journey and my story. And I'm grateful that I was able to share part of it in this book alongside all of y'all. Again, I don't know how I even got into the position of being able to do this alongside y'all. I'm still confused, but I'm really, really, really grateful.
I'm telling you, the Wednesday of launch day when we were on that Zoom and Jill Conrath was just in like the window next to us. It was a bit of a what alternate universe am I living in moment. I agree. Well, thank you for sharing that story, Amelia. And I think it is often the things that we didn't choose. It's often like those hard, dark, deep moments that form us more than the sort of the big moments, the ones that are supposed to be the best moments. And I think when I read about the concept of marginal privilege, it was just so visual for me. Like I could picture myself going into the margins of my story and writing, and then she was resilient. And then she chose grit. And I think for so many women in sales, we're often in positions that we maybe wouldn't choose to be. We have experiences that we wouldn't choose for ourselves, but we get to choose how we react. We get to choose to find our community and come back stronger. So I love that. And not to like rub it into everybody, but Amelia and I do get to meet for a happy hour later this month in Tampa. So watch out for that content coming your way. I know.
Awesome.
Jen, join us. Yes. Jen's in Tampa. Yes. We're going to TikTok.
Wait, what?
I don't know how to TikTok, and we're TikToking.
We're TikToking.
I don't know how to TikTok. We're TikToking though.
We're going
I'm
to
in
do
Clearwater. I'm like, where's my invite?
Well, you're
What's happening right now?
It's right now. It's live. It's a live invite. It's a live proposal. Do you say yes?
I'm in. I'm in. Tell me when. We're there.
Amazing. And while you were sharing your story, Shawanda joined us. Hello, welcome.
What's up, ladies? Hello, audience. I am so sorry
happy.
I'm late, but I am happy to be here.
Hey, better late than never, right?
Absolutely.
I feel like, can we come right to you? Can I put you on the spot?
Sure. Let's do it.
Okay. I think for all of us, as I was reading the book, a part of our story was finding our unique voice and leaning into that and realizing that, maybe we're not everybody's cup of tea, or like, who cares though? Like, we are our own people and we're going to go into the world with that. But for me, and I'm thinking for many of you, it was a journey, right? It didn't happen overnight. It surely didn't happen in my 20s. So for folks that are on that journey still, what is your advice, Shawanda? Like, how would you encourage them to find their own voice?
Yeah, absolutely. And it took me a while to find mine. I have been in the professional sales world for over 16, 17 years. And I would probably say only about 2.5 years ago is when I actually started to find my voice. One of the things I had been very, I guess I would call it naive about the lack of women in sales. And I was just used to, hey, you know what? I'm going to go, I'm going to hit my target, and I'm going to go home and be a mom, and that's it, right? And as I started, listening and joining other like-minded individuals and hearing that, there just wasn't a lot of women in B2B sales, I was like, really? There's not? And then I started doing more and more research, and I was like, oh my God. And then to layer on top of that, I started looking at women of color, and then women of color in leadership. And I was like, oh my God, I am a very small percentage of people that are in sales, but also leading people in sales. We've got to change this. I've got to change this. And I think it was really around what really, I think, opened my eyes actually was around, when all the George Floyd stuff was going on and the Black Lives Matter stuff was going on. And I kept saying, oh my God, this is not just, inequalities happening right now in police brutality, but I'm turning it now to looking at the B2B world, and there's just a lot of inequities that are going on for women of color and women in general. How do we actually educate and change the status quo? And so that's when I actually started saying, you know what, I've got to actually amplify my voice. I've got to make it heard. I've got to just start somewhere. You've got to start small and just grow from there. And so what I would tell anyone that is suffering from, not letting their voice be heard or not getting heard is, you know what, keep going. Don't stop, and make your voice louder and louder and louder. And what can also help you with that is, again, the social media, getting with people like us, right, that are on this call, and helping to push those messages out there, making sure that if you do see an inequity in your job, or you see an inequity in a conversation, or let's talk about microaggressions, because they're all over the place. Call it out. Don't be afraid, call it out. And so those are the things that I would say you really have to continue to push, and, get people to back you on your side to push these things as well. And, that's really all part of, even when I joined B2B sales, in my chapter, I actually called it Fear, Face Everything and Rise, because when you're looking at something new, or you're looking at doing something, you've got to just face all the challenges that are going to come your way. And you're going to continue to rise once you finish facing those challenges. And as you all know, you cannot grow in your comfort zone. So you've got to get out of that comfort zone, be uncomfortable, because eventually it becomes comfortable for you. And then you continue to grow and you continue to rise.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Just pushing against those boundaries, even if it's gently, just constantly pushing. And
Yes.
For folks listening, depending on what studies you look at right now, like contemporary, only about like 32 to 40% of B2B sales is female. Like 40% is if you go on like the really, really generous ones. If you look at women in sales leadership, it's about 12 to 19%, depending on what studies you look at. If you look at women of color in leadership, that drops down to single digits. So it is there is an issue with representation. There is a lack of representation. And I might ask you a follow-up question, because you had some good calls to action, not just for folks who maybe are marginalized voices, but there is a bit of a narrative that like diversity is maybe enough. I don't agree with that. I think that if you're only hiring women, then not making them feel safe and not making them feel heard, if you're not creating systems with equity built in, you're not doing enough. So you called out amplifying people's voices. You called out speaking up if you see a microaggression. Any other recommendations for people that want to be our advocates, for the sales leaders out there who we can look to amplify? Any other tips, tricks for them?
I think the other thing, and some of the things that I have done is, when I want to be an advocate for something and I don't know much about it, or I don't understand what the big challenges are, open up a conversation. So go to a leader that may be facing some challenges and just say, hey, I hear that there are some challenges with sales leadership, or whatever it may be, diversity, women in sales. Can you tell me a little bit about your perspective and kind of where you see the challenges and what they may be? So I would say setting those meetings one-on-one with the people that that you want to talk to just try to understand what really those challenges are and ways in which you think you can help, right? And we talk about allies, we talk about advocates. I like the word ally, I do, but my biggest thing is I want you to be an advocate, because an ally is just going to say what they do, but they're not going to show any action. If you show me action, I'm not calling you an ally. You were an advocate, like you were on my side. Allies, sometimes I don't really need you there, because all you're doing is speaking, and action speaks louder than words for me. So, when I see those men and women that are taking steps and they're taking action, I am all for, recognizing them as, hey, these are the advocates for women in sales. These are the advocates for sales leadership. So again, I would say just understanding a little bit more about what the issues are and asking, where can I help? What's the best way to help? That's a start.
I love that. I love that distinction. And it's almost like you're saying that the bedrock is leading from a place of curiosity and helpfulness. And it's almost like those are the same exact skills that make a great
Yes.
sales professional.
Absolutely. And we always say as salespeople, we got to be curious. We're not judgmental, we're curious. And
I
that's
just want
why
to
we
understand.
ask 20 questions, because we want to make sure we got the right solution for you.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. It's so true. Oh, amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that perspective and sharing those opportunities for folks listening to take action. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Jennifer, I'm so excited. We're coming to you. I'm the last chapter, but you're at the very, very end of the book with me. I don't know, ladies, did they save the best for last? I'm kidding, sort of.
Are you really, though? Are you really?
I mean, we got to amplify our own voices. I'm just following your lead.
There you go.
Oh my gosh. Jennifer, I'm so excited to come to your chapter because it was a really actionable chapter. You shared 6 tips. Definitely for the folks listening, make sure that you go and you read all of these chapters. I saw a few folks say that they are ordering the book now. So thank you for their support, or thank you for your support. A few folks in the chat I know have already read the book, and we have some folks over here on TikTok right out of screen that you can't say. So we're already TikToking. We're doing it live right now. But one of your tips, Jennifer, really spoke to me. I think it was number 4, tip number 4. And the advice was, don't take things personally, which is a lot easier said than done. And I think often when I'm talking with people that are not interested in sales as a career, maybe they try a sales role and then they decide it's not for them, that fear of rejection is a huge factor in terms of why they don't want to try it again or why it didn't work out. So I'd love to hear, like, how do you actually not take it personally?
I just don't. I learned early on that most of the time it's not about you, right? In life, even when we don't think it's about us, we tend to go there in our brain. There's a lot of psychology to it and a lot of research that shows kind of why that happens. Most of the time, it's not about you. It's about a bad day that they've had. It's about a budget decision that hasn't come through. It's about a committee of decision makers that need to gather. Now, all of those things that I just mentioned have to do with, as a sales leader, asking the right questions, right? Identifying and really helping to allow that person to share a little bit more with you about who's helping to make these decisions, about what time frame has it already been budgeted for. Is this really a pain point that needs to be addressed in the next quarter, or is it a pain point that needs to be addressed in the next year? Is this a pain point that everyone agrees is a pain point? What happens if this, if XYZ doesn't get solved or doesn't get solutioned? What happens? You can ask all of these questions, and many times it will prove to you that it's not you. If you don't ask a lot of questions and really try to qualify the pursuit and understanding what their challenge is, then you can end up feeling ghosted. You can end up feeling like it is your fault. Like, it's just, it's all about you. And it is not. And I definitely think that came with some practice. I had a mentor early on, someone that I rolled to and who became a mentor, who shared that with me early on in my career. It's not about you. Don't get stuck in the no's and the rejections being about you. Be really good at your craft. Understand the kinds of questions that you should be asking. Understand how to really uncover their pain point so that you can help them. Or I've always, been a huge proponent of, can I help them, right? I want to ask all of these questions, like we've all just talked about, the 20 questions, the curiosity that guides so much of the conversation. Because you know what, if I can't help them, I want to put them in touch with someone who can, right? So if my product or my solution isn't the answer to their challenge, then I immediately want to put them in touch with an organization or a product or a person who I think could be helpful to them. So again, I go back to earlier in my career. I had someone that I rolled to and worked with, and who used to say all the time, "It's not about you. The 90% no's and the 10% yeses. You got to let that roll off your back. It's not about you. Get really good at your craft. Ask a lot of questions. Be very specific about what you know about that particular pain point. Really do the research. Understand your customer, and get curious."
I love that. And I love how you framed it as an evolution, right? Of really honing in on your craft, because there are times when you are that new BDR or that new SDR, you're going to get hung up on, and there's literally nothing that you can do about it. And to your point, Jennifer, it was probably because, their daughter stayed out late and they were angry about it. Their boss was rude to them. It has nothing to do, you are not the reason that you got hung up on. And then as you evolve through your career, we actually had a great comment about being able to approach that rejection with empathy and know your product, know your audience well enough to ask the right questions. But I think my favorite thing that you shared, because it speaks to the core of what I think makes a good salesperson, is that it's not a rejection if you didn't win the business, because you still have this amazing opportunity to create a connection, to refer them to somebody else, to help them in another way. So it's almost like reframing what rejection means. Rejection isn't a lost deal. So I love that.
That's so true. And I love how you mentioned to reframe it, because again, I've been in my career over 20 years, and I still help folks that I met 15 years ago. Sometimes I do deals. Sometimes someone come back to me 5 years later, or sometimes I'll remember a pain point and I'll have, created a new friendship with someone who maybe didn't end up doing business with me for the reason that I just mentioned. The pain point wasn't something I could address, but I introduced him or her. I always try to leave that conversation. I always share with my teams, always leave the conversation, making sure that the person that you spoke with is smarter at the end of the conversation. Whether or not you're closing a deal, that's not the point in that moment. It's asking good questions, being curious, understanding their customer journey, their customer pain points inside and out, and really being sure that they leave the conversation with more knowledge than when they entered that conversation. That will come back to you in spades. It'll come back to you in the moment many times. It'll come back to you in the future many times. And it'll also come back to you in terms of the network that you create and the people that you meet, both on the sales side of the world and also on the purchasing side of the world, those who you're trying to solve their pain points. So it really does come back to you. Always leave someone smarter than when you first started the conversation. Share your knowledge. Be generous with your knowledge.
I love that. And I feel like that is like the absolute perfect message to end this session of Business Book Club on. I hope that we left the folks that were kind enough to give us their time and their attention a little bit maybe wiser or more inspired or more empowered than they were at the top of the hour. So thank you for your time. Make sure to connect with these amazing co-authors. Everybody is active on LinkedIn, so make sure to send those LinkedIn invites off. Ladies, as always, like just such a pleasure to gather and such a privilege to be a part of this community. So thank you for your time and your stories.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.